Call upon the senator from the 43rd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that Senate Bill 288 be removed from the table.
Mr. Secretary, if you'd read the caption.
Senate Bill 288 by Senator Anderson of the 43rd and others. A bill to be titled an act to amend Code Section 35.337 of the OCGA relating to the review of individuals' criminal history record, information, definitions, privacy considerations, written application requesting review and inspection, so as to provide for the automatic restriction of certain criminal history record information of arrests when there has been a final disposition and for other purposes. Mr. President, on March 5th, 2020, the Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectfully submitted by Senator Stone of the 23rd chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 288, a bill to be titled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Crime Information Center so as to expand the ability of certain individuals to request record restriction for certain misdemeanor and conditional discharges and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Anderson of the 43rd and Senator Payne of the 54th offer the following amendment number 1 to amend the Senate Committee on Judiciary substitute to Senate Bill 288 by inserting after restriction on line 251 under the subsection and by inserting the following after line 301. 6. When an individual was convicted in the state of an offense for which that individual has been granted a pardon from the State Board of Pardons and Paroles and for other purposes. That completes order, Mr. President.
Is there objection for removing the bill? Call upon the senator from the 43rd to speak the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 288 does two things. One, it allows for rehabilitated individuals the ability to petition the courts to have certain misdemeanor convictions restricted and sealed so that they have the opportunity to get a job and have access to housing. It also, number 2, protects employers and encourages them to hire rehabilitated individuals. Georgia is behind the rest of the nation on this matter. 41 states allow a rehabilitated individual the opportunity to restrict and seal some convictions after a period of time. Over 40% of all Georgians have a criminal history, and over 10% of all Georgians have a criminal history with one misdemeanor conviction. In other words, out of 11 million Georgians, 4.2 million Georgians have some type of record. If an individual has served their full sentence and remained crime-free for 4 additional years, this bill would allow them to petition the courts to restrict and seal their records. Serious violent crimes and sexual crimes are a list of misdemeanors that cannot be restricted. Prosecutors and judges would have to sign off on every restriction or sealing. Employers are supportive of this effort. You will see a letter on your desk from the Atlanta Metro Chamber in support of this measure. Over the last 10 years, Georgia's employment growth has outpaced the nation, but our state labor force growth has not and was flat last year. Currently, there are hundreds of thousands of open jobs in Georgia, all while the unemployment rate for individuals with a record is about 15%. Having a job is the number one way of allowing people to take care of their families and the number one way of preventing recidivism. If you have served your full sentence for a misdemeanor and prove that you have been rehabilitated, you deserve the ability to get a job. It makes communities safer and strengthens our economy. This bill also protects employers that hire rehabilitated individuals by prohibiting the admission of a criminal history record if the record is restricted. The amendment provides for an individual who is convicted and has been granted a pardon from the State Board of Pardons and Paroles as provided in the code section 42-9-42, as long as the offense was not a serious violent felony or a sexual offense. The individual has not further been convicted of any other crime. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will take I'm sorry, Mr. President. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
I do not resemble that remark.
I will yield to questions.
Senator from the 23rd, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, I will.
Isn't it true that this is a great bill, that it extends the process that had only been available for youthful offenders to those convicted of misdemeanors?
Yes, it is.
And isn't it true that the amendment only extends it just one step further to those in front of the pardon who receive a pardon?
Yes, it does.
And it carves out violent felonies and sexual crimes.
It does. Those are not included.
And isn't it true I support the amendment too?
Yes, it is true, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your support.
Good bill.
Thank you so much.
Call upon the senator from the 27th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the representative yield?
No, I do not.
Touche.
Does the senator yield?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I do have a serious question, and I don't want to read these lines out loud just because it's a little uncomfortable, but I'm curious why we are striking lines 268 through 270 from the list of things that can be restricted from a record. They basically reference sexual activity for hire as far as I read 268 and potentially 269 as well.
Thank you for the question. Actually, it was actually a cleanup for the code, the current code. And I know the list sounds and probably looks a little dirty, but it was just a code cleanup.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You have no further questions, Senator. Any call upon 45th.
Oh,
You have no further questions, Senator.
Thank
Call
you,
upon-
Mr. President, the most wonderful president in the world, the entire world. Thank
All
you.
handsome with a full head of hair. Call upon the senator from the 45th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I appreciate the Senator bringing forth Senate Bill 288, and I rise in favor of this bill and also in favor of the amendment. And the reason I'm here is because it's kind of sentimental. Y'all know I'm leaving, and kind of words of wisdom that I'm trying to bestow upon you. But for the past couple of years, Gwinnett County was very fortunate to receive the first federal grant about the Georgia reentry program. And I just want to encourage you in your individual counties that some of your counties do have these reentry programs set up and moving forward. Some of the counties, because I've talked to some of the senators, do not even have these existing programs. And I want you to encourage with your state government, as federal, state, and local government, to work with your local folks, your local elected representatives, your board of commissioners in these reentry programs. I go to the meetings at least quarterly, and I can tell you how fulfilling it is to go to the meetings and to see these different levels of government working with these reentry programs. And they are absolutely phenomenal. And when you go to your local correction facility, and you see the people in that facility going through their programs, it is amazing work that we're doing, and it all started out with former Governor Deal on the reentry program. But I encourage you to ask your Board of Commissioners, why don't you have this program, and why don't you help fund it with the state of Georgia? because these people get a second opportunity, a second chance. And it is so fulfilling as a state senator to go and see the volume of people that you're helping, and the success rate is phenomenal. So I encourage you to look up the Georgia Reentry Program in your individual county, and I yield the well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 54th. You're recognized to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Friends, I rise. As many of you know, for 30 years, I had the blessed opportunity to serve as working with youthful offenders as a state juvenile probation officer. And I will tell you that what I loved about my job was seeing the actions of restorative justice in front of me, when you saw not only the victim, but also the assailant restored after a crime had been committed. And truly, isn't that the true sense of the word justice? When we restored as if the crime had never happened. This is just a continuation of that, and I'm wholeheartedly behind this, because right now we have thousands upon thousands of young offenders in our state that they've passed the age of, they've been 17 or older, but between that age, psychologists will tell you that the brain's not fully developed until we get into our 20s at some point. And so this allows all those tens of thousands of youthful offenders that have one or two minor misdemeanors to give them a new start. And if for Georgia to continue to be the #1 state to do business, we're in need of new people, talented people, to be able to go into advance in the workforce. And this just gives a lot of those people the same opportunity to find restorative justice and to move forward so that they can have meaningful and purpose-filled lives. If there are no questions, Mr. President, I will yield the well.
You do have questions. Senator from the 23rd, you recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator yield?
I do.
All right, the record restriction under this bill does not extend to law enforcement. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Just for members of the private sector.
Right.
Thank you.
Senator from the 45th, you recognized for a question.
Would the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Senator, since you have such vast experience, isn't it true that it's often just one time that juvenile understands and they become shocked that they had done something wrong, that if you give them that second opportunity, they never repeat it again? Is that not true?
That is true, and I will tell you, as a probation officer, I would tell my 16-year-old sitting in front of me in my office, I said, one day you're going to wake up in your 20s, and just like all of us, everyone in this room did. We wake up in our 20s one day and we think, my God, my parents were the smartest people on the face of the earth. We didn't think that way at 16. We didn't think that way at 16. We all thought we had it figured out at 16. And it's literally, we make poor judgments and poor decision making through those years, and this just gives them an opportunity to restore that.
Senator, you have no further questions.
I will yield the well and ask for your favorable support. Thank you.
Does any senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Hearing none. The question is on the adoption of amendment number 1. Is there objection? Hearing no objection, the amendment is adopted. The question is on adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? As amended, hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question now being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question on the passage of the bill by substitute. Are all those in favor vote yea? Those opposed vote nay. Mr. Secretary, unlock machines. This is definitely much more time consuming. Take this off the table. What'd you say? This is definitely more time consuming when you're taking them off the table. Let's slow it down. We are at 818, is that where we are? 818, 818, yeah, okay, thanks. On the passage of the bill, the ayes are 49, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Congratulations, Senator from the 43rd.